Welcome to the variable slide. Variables. In programming terms, they can easily be said to be address locations where you get to save your data. But in a more human readable understanding, you could say variable is a name given to any element. For instance, what is your name? My name is George. If I get to call George, I as a human being get to answer. If I get to call your name, you get to answer. Because technically, your name is saving you, which is the data, as its value. These are names used in storing address places where your data is saved. In a more human sense, it's simply a name that is used to identify an object, a data, or a piece of information. Your name, for example, is used to reference you each time it is called. Just like the last slide, I showed you guys how to go to the console section of your browser and test out your JavaScript codes. So for the sake of this course, when you get to a particular code, you need to pause the video, take the code, and practicalize it in the console section of your browser. For example, we have a variable called name with a value, a leader. Declaring a variable with a var gives you the global scope, and it can also be redeclared. Declaring a variable also with let won't really allow you to redeclare the same variable again. Assuming you have a variable called var name is equal to a leader, and you want to still change that particular variable or redeclare it by saying var name equal to George. Using var, you'll be able to achieve that. But if you are using let, you'd have an error telling you that you cannot redeclare this particular variable. Declaring a variable using const, more like constant, is an approach used when you are specific that that particular variable's value is never to be changed because it is constant. And you cannot declare this variable and initialize it later. You'd need to declare it by saying const name followed by initializing it with a value. This is how the code looks like, and the necessary error you'd get to run into when you try to run this particular code. For example, you have the name a leader. Now you are reassigning the value of name to school. This would work. And also when you try to redeclare the name variable with another variable, it would still work because you are working with variables, which is var for short. But if you're using let to declare and also initialize the variable name, you'd run into this problem when you're trying to redeclare this particular name variable with a new value. But you can also update it. Dealing with const, you'd get to run into an error when you try to assign a new value to an already created constant variable. Variable naming rules. A variable must start with a letter in the alphabet or an underscore for it to be approved as a proper variable name. A variable is also case sensitive. For instance, you have underscore a leader, not underscore, sorry, lowercase a leader, and you also have uppercase a leader. Now, this variable and that of this are not the same thing. You can also know you cannot use reserved keywords in the language to create a variable. Example of the reserved keyword is the for, the this, of, and type of. Variable naming cases. There are three basic variable naming cases you can use in JavaScript. You have the snake case, which means when you have two or more words for a particular variable name, you need to create a delimiter with an underscore. You have a Pascal case. This Pascal case denotes that when you have two or more words as a variable, the first letter of all the words must start with a capital letter. This is mostly used when you're trying to create a class in JavaScript. The camel case, which as the name implies, camel, allows you to create a variable that contains two or more words where the first letter of the subsequent words are in capital letter, but the first letter of the first word is in small letter, denoting the hump on the camel back. In the next slide, we'll get to talk about data types in JavaScript and how to assign a data type to a JavaScript variable.